And you all and on the good work you do. I read all your statements and there's a lot of commonality across them around the issues that you have identified. And I suppose we've got to the situation now where I'm hearing from young people that they're almost choosing their course based on where they think they might get accommodation, which is not what it should be about at all. You should be choosing the course you feel is most suited to what you want to pursue in life. And on having a conversation with a parent recently, they would have pointed out that probably UCD has the most accommodation. So I'm somewhat dismayed, Michael, by your report on the condition of it, first of all, that some of it is in quite poor condition, but also maybe you'd expand on the tiered system that you're talking about there. And I'm very alarmed as well about, you're saying there's 67.7 million of taxpayers' money being invested in new accommodation, which is great, it's welcome, we need to see an investment. Are you saying it's 250,000 per bedroom? So what are they, gold-plated rooms? I mean, that's ridiculous. So maybe you would expand on that, because I think it's something that it's raising alarm bells with me around, you know, who's overseeing the building of this accommodation.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think I'll start with the tiered system of accommodation in the university. So basically, when the first phase of the village, which is a type of accommodation which is offered within the university, was completed, it was financed through private equity. And through that, essentially, during the fitting out of the building, what the university did was begin to offer rooms at silver, gold and platinum, and then platinum was penthouse level. So what ended up happening is that based on whether you were assigned to a higher floor, you were charged more, basically because of that stipulation. And the point that I've kind of continually raised is that in May there was a design guide for state-sponsored student accommodation which was released, which didn't specifically mention banning tiered systems of accommodation like we have in the university. And now, as the second phase of the village begins with nearly €70 million of taxpayers' money, we actually have no guarantee that there isn't going to be a penthouse financed by the taxpayer within that accommodation itself. Like, frankly, it's farcical. So, like, the situation is quite difficult within UCD. We have the most accommodation, but we've also the most expensive, and the condition of the accommodation itself can also be quite problematic. We have students who come to us, and I made it a feature of my campaign, that have issues around black mould within their accommodations in the university. The other thing that we have also seen is rodents and mice or rats in some instances around accommodation. I have a personal friend of mine, we actually have a video of us trying to sweep a mouse out of the house. If the committee might find that enlightening, I could send it in. But yeah, no, so it is a deteriorating situation within the university. We actually have no guarantees where the second phase of the village is going to go, despite it having €70 million of taxpayers' funding. The point on its expense is that it's a university and government partnership. So the university are paying roughly half of it, and the government are paying roughly half of it. But €250,000 per bedroom on land you own is simply just ridiculous in my own estimations.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Michael. Yeah, no, we want to see increased investment, and you've all called for that, but we want to see that investment used sensibly, you know, to create, you know, purpose-built accommodation for students, but that's, you know, of a good standard, but it doesn't need, as you say, to be a sweet standard, like, you know, platinum sweet. And amazing in Galway, I mean, you were saying there's only just over 1,800 beds for 20,000 students. That's student accommodation. I mean, has it always been that low? That's like always it's a lovely university, and it's a place that students have always flocked to. You'd imagine that there should be more than that. Are there plans to expand?
So that's the purpose-built on-campus accommodation, and off-campus there are several more purpose-built accommodations as well, but when you add all of those up, you're still only getting around almost the 4,000 mark if we're including everything that you could possibly consider as purpose-built. It hasn't always been like that, in that it's been worse. We've just had Dunlin built. Dunlin is sort of, I would categorise it as luxury accommodation. They're all double beds, they're all en suites, and they're all, you know, way up towards the 800 mark for accommodation. So they're not affordable for students. So those beds on campus, you know, whether you can even include them in the tally of beds that are available to students is ridiculous. And I had it, as I said in the thing, that Airbnb is just, it's just getting worse and worse. City Council at the start of the year said they'd received 24 applications and only 9 of which they approved, but yet there are still over 1,000 registered properties on the Airbnb website, which makes completely no sense. Like, what's the point in having a piece of legislation to regulate these if they're not being regulated, you know? And I know there was the comment about digs, and they will continue. There's no point in arguing that digs will continue to be a part of student accommodation, but what we're seeing is a change from that being a choice. In the past, students have been able to decide, oh, does digs suit me? And that's, you know, I won't argue with that. I have so many fabulous stories from students who are in digs. My own vice president for education, her landlady baked her a cake. But, you know, we're also hearing all these horror stories, and students have no choice at this point. We're not saying, oh, maybe you'd rent a room, it's beneficial for you. We're saying, please, please rent out a room, because students are being left with no choice.
Yeah, I know, and you've all been very strong on the need for regulation for digs, and that absolutely does need to happen. As I said, some people have brilliant experiences and others have absolutely horrendous as well. And I suppose just very quickly on the repurposing of student accommodation, and I know, Emil, you talked about it in Sligo, and again, I would have heard from students from Cavan, where I'm from as well, who were, you know, about the loss of student accommodation a few years ago when there was an attempt to re-rent it. But I'm hearing where, you know, different investors have received permission to actually construct student-built accommodation, charge extremely high rents, and then make the argument that there's no demand and look for a change of planning or change of use of this, and it's being granted. I mean, like, again, we need to see that stopped as well. But I know you answered to Deputy Smith there that you were saying that some of it is coming back into student use. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the 2 blocks of Clarion Village, they are coming back, but that is basically not taken into account those 500 beds that were lost through Ben Bulben and Milligan Court. Basically, when we are running the rent room campaign, we are just getting to that level of what we lost, you know, basically overnight. So all our efforts are not really building up to a better conditions. It's just trying to fill up the gap, you know, that was created overnight. So it's very problematic, yeah. And we would like to see those coming back, and also we would like to see protection, you know, on those privately owned purpose-built student accommodations, so they cannot repurpose that easily. Because the story with Ben Bulben and Milligan Court, it is important to say, I believe that after that started to happen, and there was legislation brought in place that in order to repurpose, you have to be 1 year vacant. So what they did is that they stayed 1 year vacant. Yeah. How ridiculous that is, you know. In order to repurpose, you will say, okay, no problem, we will stay 1 year vacant, we will not house anyone, we will create crisis for students, and then we will house, you know. In the context of, let's say, government incentives, you know, it's ridiculous that being 1 year vacant is considered profitable. You know, it's just ridiculous.